The night was silent, except for the steady hum of the helicopter blades cutting through the air. Deep inside enemy territory, a team of U.S. Navy SEALs prepared for one of the most dangerous missions of their lives. Among them was their only female operator, a woman who had fought harder than most to earn her place in a world dominated by men. Every mission she took on came with questions, whispers, and doubts from outsiders. But to her team, she wasn't just another SEAL, she was family. Someone who had already proven her courage countless times. Tonight, however, she would face the hardest choice of her career. The objective seemed simple on paper: infiltrate, locate, and neutralize a threat before it could strike American forces. The orders were clear: no hesitation, no mistakes. The success of the mission depended on speed and precision. As the team moved into position, the air felt heavier than usual, as though the night itself was holding its breath. Their target was in sight, and her rifle was locked on. All she had to do was follow through with a single command: shoot. But something inside her refused to let her finger pull the trigger. She saw what others couldn't in that split second: something off, something wrong with the situation. Her instincts screamed at her that pulling the trigger wasn't the answer. It wasn't weakness, and it wasn't fear. It was a deeper sense of responsibility, a gut feeling honed from years of training and combat. For a moment, she stood frozen between duty and conscience, knowing that one choice could either brand her a hero or a traitor. Her teammates waited, tense and confused, not yet realizing the weight of her decision. Seconds stretched like hours, and every heartbeat echoed like thunder in her ears. Then she lowered her weapon. Against every order, against everything drilled into her as a SEAL, she refused to fire. What she didn't know in that moment was that her refusal, her act of defiance, would not doom her team, but instead save every single one of them from a deadly trap waiting in the shadows. And as the silence of that decision sank in, the team realized they weren't the hunters anymore. They were already being hunted. The radio crackled softly in her ear, a quiet reminder of the command that still waited for confirmation. No one on the other end knew that she hadn't fired. No one knew that her hesitation wasn't weakness, was a warning. She kept her breathing steady, scanning the shadows through her scope. What she saw wasn't what intelligence had promised. The figure she was ordered to eliminate wasn't armed, wasn't even moving like an enemy fighter. It looked more like bait. And suddenly, the silence of the night didn't feel empty anymore. It felt alive, charged, as if dozens of unseen eyes were locked on them. Her team shifted in position, restless but trusting. They had followed her through fire before, and though they didn't yet understand her decision, something in her posture told them to stay sharp. She gave a subtle hand signal: hold. The men froze, no questions asked. Out here, hesitation could mean disaster, but blind obedience could mean the same. Somewhere in the darkness, she sensed layers of danger they hadn't been told about. The mission briefing hadn't mentioned this. The intel hadn't warned them. And that was when the first doubts began to sink in. Were they walking into a setup? Her mind raced through the possibilities. She knew her superiors wouldn't forgive hesitation. She knew the weight of disobeying an order could end her career, maybe even her freedom. But she also knew what it felt like to trust her instincts when the data didn't add up. Those instincts had saved lives before. Tonight, they told her one thing: if she had pulled that trigger, the entire team would already be dead. Somewhere in the trees ahead, a faint glint of metal caught her eye. It wasn't random. It wasn't natural. And it wasn't alone. Every SEAL mission was built on trust in the plan. Trust in the intelligence, and above all, trust in each other. But as she kept her rifle steady, staring into the darkness, she couldn't shake the feeling that the plan itself was flawed. The target she was told to eliminate wasn't acting like a threat. The figure wasn't holding a weapon, wasn't moving with the sharpness of a fighter. It was almost too still, too perfectly placed. To her, it looked staged, like a lure designed to trigger a mistake. She thought back to the briefing room only hours before. The intel had been rushed, pieced together from intercepted signals and satellite images. There had been no margin for questions, no time for second opinions. Follow orders. Move fast. Don't hesitate. That was drilled into them. And yet, something about this mission had felt off from the beginning. Now, kneeling in the dirt with her team's lives in her hands, those doubts came roaring back. Her teammates trusted her, but they didn't see what she saw through her scope. They only saw her pause, and with every passing second, the tension grew heavier. She could almost feel their eyes on her, waiting for her to confirm or deny what they all expected her to do. The silence around them deepened, pressing against their nerves. Then, just at the edge of her vision, the faintest flicker of movement, metal catching the moonlight. A shape crouched low in the brush. Her pulse quickened. It wasn't just one. There were more. Hidden weapons, hidden bodies, positioned perfectly to ambush them the moment she pulled that trigger. She tightened her grip on the rifle, her decision already made. This wasn't a target. This was a trap. The air felt heavier with every second, as if the night itself knew what was about to happen. Her finger rested against the trigger guard, steady but unmoving. Through the scope, she could see the decoy standing still, head bowed, framed perfectly to draw fire. But beyond that, tucked into the tree line, the danger grew clearer shadows, shifting in ways only trained eyes could notice. The faint gleam of optics. The subtle outline of rifles hidden in the brush. They weren't alone. The team had walked straight into the jaws of an ambush. Her heart pounded, but her mind stayed sharp. She gave a quiet hand signal, barely moving her wrist. Hold. The men obeyed instantly, trusting her without question. They hadn't yet seen the full picture, but they knew her well enough to sense something was wrong. Every instinct told her they were surrounded. The silence wasn't safety, it was the calm before an explosion. The radio crackled again. Sharper this time, command demanding confirmation. She clenched her jaw, refusing to answer. If she spoke, the sound could give away their position. If she fired, the ambush would spring. Every option carried risk, and yet she felt a strange calm rising through her nerves. She wasn't guessing anymore. She knew. A twig snapped in the distance. Then another. Movement spread through the shadows like ripples in water. The enemy was closing in, patient but ready. She could almost feel their eyes through the darkness, waiting for the first shot to light the fire. Her team shifted quietly, weapons raised, breath shallow. One wrong move, one sound too loud, and it would all erupt. Her finger brushed the trigger, not to fire, but to prepare. The storm was seconds away. The question was who would strike first. The stillness shattered not with gunfire, but with a voice. A faint whisper carried through the trees, speaking in a language her team didn't understand, but she did. Years of training in foreign dialects paid off in that instant. What she heard froze her blood. The whisper wasn't an order to attack. It was a countdown. Someone out there was waiting to trigger something far worse than bullets. Her eyes darted back to the decoy figure in her scope. The bowed head, the unnatural stillness, the way the ground around it seemed untouched. It hit her all at once. The figure wasn't bait for a firefight. It was a trigger point. One shot, and whatever was wired beneath that ground would take her team out in a single blast. The trap wasn't just about ambush. It was engineered for total destruction. She signaled sharply, palm flat, a silent warning. Her teammates tensed but didn't move, reading her perfectly. Trust had always been their strongest weapon. And now it was the only thing holding them together in this suffocating darkness. The countdown continued. Low and steady, and she realized the enemy wasn't waiting for them to fire anymore. They were running out of time. A cold rush of fear ran through her chest, not for herself, but for the men who had followed her here. The mission was no longer about completing orders, was about survival, then. From the opposite ridge, a flash of movement caught her eye. Another unit armed, camouflaged, and far too organized to be locals. Whoever had set this trap wasn't acting alone. They were backed by forces her team hadn't been briefed about. Someone higher up had either underestimated the threat or hadn't told the full truth. The realization cut deep. This wasn't just a mission gone wrong. This was betrayal. And now the enemy was closing in from both sides. The countdown hit its final seconds, the whispering voice growing sharper, urgent. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she realized there was no more time to hesitate. With one swift motion, she signaled her team to scatter, each man diving for cover as she swung her rifle away from the decoy. Instead of firing at the figure, she aimed higher toward the ridge where the hidden unit had just revealed itself. Her shot cracked through the night, breaking the silence like glass. The first enemy went down, and chaos exploded. Gunfire lit the darkness as her team opened up, their positions already compromised. The ambush had sprung, but not in the way the enemy expected. Instead of panicking, the SEALs moved like a single machine, shifting, covering, pushing forward. The female SEAL's instincts had saved them from the trap, and now those same instincts guided her through the storm. Every shot she fired wasn't just defense, it was buying seconds, keeping her brothers alive. Then the earth shook. A deafening blast ripped through the ground where the decoy had stood. The figure vanished in a cloud of fire and dirt, confirming her worst fear: it had been rigged all along. If she had followed her order, if she had pulled that trigger, it would all have been erased in an instant. Her chest burned as she pressed forward, adrenaline sharpening every move. One by one, the enemy began to fall back, their advantage broken. For a moment, it felt like the tide was turning. The team regrouped, battered but alive, and she finally allowed herself a breath. But then came the final twist. Through the haze of smoke, she spotted another Shape, a drone rising silently into the sky, its red light blinking like a warning. This wasn't over. The ambush had only been the first step. Something much bigger had just been set in motion, and their fight for survival was only beginning. The drone hovered above them, its red light pulsing against the night sky like a heartbeat. For a moment, the team braced for another explosion, another strike meant to finish what the ambush had started. But instead of firing, the drone veered off, disappearing into the darkness. It wasn't an attack, it was surveillance. Whoever had set the trap hadn't just wanted them dead. They wanted to watch. The realization cut deeper than the battle itself. This mission had never been about one target. It had been about testing them, studying them, seeing how far they could be pushed. And in that test, their survival was the only victory that mattered, exhausted and running low on ammunition. The SEALs moved quickly, withdrawing from the kill zone with precision. Every step away from that burning crater felt like defiance, proof that the enemy's plan had failed. The female SEAL led them out, her decision not to fire now the very reason they were alive. Her instincts had gone against orders, but they had uncovered the truth. Hands saved the team from certain death. Back at base, there would be questions. There would be doubt, and maybe even accusations. But as her brothers sat in silence during the long ride back, not one of them questioned her choice. They had seen the wires, felt the blast, and stared into the face of betrayal together. Trust wasn't just earned, that night it was sealed forever. Looking out into the fading horizon, she knew their fight wasn't over. Missions would come and go, enemies would rise and fall, but the lesson of that night would stay with them. Sometimes the hardest order to follow is the one your own instincts give you. And sometimes refusing to pull the trigger is what saves everyone.